Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwolere. The days of Juventus winning Serie A season after season feel like they're long gone. Last week, Thiago Motta was sacked with Juve languishing outside of the top four places. Add to that, they're also out of the Champions League and Coppa Italia as well. So what has gone wrong at Juve and how do they rebuild? Okay, with us today we have our football Italian journalist, commentator and also host of Pressing Max Callegari, plus the Athletics Carl Anka is with us as well. Max, wow, let's start with you. Look, Motta's sacking was fascinating for me because we look at what he did at Bologna and the style of football he had at Bologna, and you sort of felt this was a great graduation to go to the big club Juventus, but he only lasted 9 months in Turin. What went wrong?
Yeah, that's true. Everybody expected more from him and from his style of football. I think that we also had a lot of signs about the thing that he wasn't fit yet to play to manage Juventus because above all about the relationship with the players. This was the great problem he had because he changed 7 captains in more than 40 games, for example, and he subbed off players when they weren't in their best moment, and when they were in the best moment, he didn't. They didn't play in the successive games. So he hadn't a chosen and a stable team. So this was the key of the failure. And then, of course, the games against PSV Eindhoven, against Empoli. He said after the game in the Coppa Italia, this was a shame because Empoli played with the reserve team with many young players, and they lost at penalties and the whole stadium, Allianz Stadium. So there were different and many signs that he wasn't fit yet to manage Juventus, and there was a failure for him and also for the management because Cristiano Giuntoli have chosen Thiago Motta, chose Thiago Motta in the summer, and everybody, not only you, Ayo, thought that there was a good choice.
What style of football do Juve fans love? I mean, we look at Allegri, we look at
Win.
Conte, winning football, but in terms of style, though, I mean, are they a fan base that's now craving front foot football, like we're seeing in the modern era? Teams playing tiki-taka or dynamic style.
Yeah, they wanted to go on that way with Thiago Motta, but they also wanted to go on that way with Andrea Pirlo. They also wanted to go on that way with Maurizio Sarri, and more, they also wanted to go on that way with Gigi Maifredi, who was the coach and the manager of Bologna in the early 90s, last 80s, early 90s, and then went to manage Juventus. And they played under him some great games, one in the Cups Cup against Barcelona. They were eliminated, but they played a fantastic game with Roberto Baggio and Totò Schillaci. But at the end of the season, in the decisive and most important part of the season, spring, last games, they couldn't win, and the project ended at the end of this season, at that season. So I think that they want, the fans of Juventus, they want winning game, but the key is you need to play well to win. You have more chances to win if you play exciting and entertaining football, modern football. But the difference is that you need to win also when you don't play well. This is the thing. You don't be you don't need to be ashamed to defend. Max Allegri always said this. You need to stay humble. You need to learn to defend. And sometimes when his team was winning 2-3 nil, he said, okay, compact, and now train to defend, train to suffer. This is the way you can win because now you can choose to defend because you are in control of the game. But there will be games in which The other team will impose you to defend, and then you need to be ready to defend, and you have to learn to defend. So this is the key, and this is the difference, in my opinion, between Sarri, Pirlo, Motta, and Conte, Allegri, and other managers in the past.
It's a tricky one, Carl, because there isn't. There were clear signs, and we've said it on this podcast, that Thiago Motta is hopefully going to be one of the better coaches in Europe. He's a young coach, and you could see from a style of play how interesting that could be wherever he went, right? But at the same time, you also need time to implement those ideas. I mean, there are various teams across Europe's big teams who are in this kind of flux of identity versus where we want to go next. Surely 9 months isn't enough time to know whether or not this guy had what it took to make Juventus a decent team.
Yes and no. And I feel this is happening with a lot of the quote unquote super heavyweights in Europe. And this has become especially pronounced since the 1920 season and COVID. So you had a round of football clubs that tried to get in former players to manage. So like Juventus got in Pirlo. Chelsea tried something with Frank Lampard. Manchester United tried something with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer United are almost their own special case.
Let's not go there.
And you look now, if you currently look at the landscape right, Bayern Munich are being managed by Vincent Kompany, which is a manager who you expect, up and coming, but perhaps this is too soon for you right now. So there are a lot of big clubs that would routinely expect to get to the Champions League quarterfinal, shall we say, that reached the point in around 2019, 2020, and then sort of went, what we're doing right now isn't currently working. We need to find something new, and we need new ideas, and we need new fresh faces. Now, some of these experimentations have been more successful than others. I mean, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets Man United to the Europa League final. Frank Lampard was a qualified success in his first time at Chelsea. And Pirlo did have some success in his season there as well. However, you do get to this point of there are eventually the questions over what else do these younger managers have when things aren't going well, and some of these managers steer into this skid better than others. And this is why very often you get this conversation about can you actually set up a defense? Can you make your team suffer? Do you have anything outside of your, well, I used to manage, and when I used to play at this football club, and when I played at this football club, we did this. Now with Thiago Motta, it seems like his approach to management and man management, and we'll probably get onto that in a little bit, was not well suited to the Juventus ecosystem, however. So perhaps, okay, yeah, maybe 9 months isn't long enough to realize, is he going to get his tactical ideas across? It appears to be, if you've realized your mistake, correcting it as soon as possible isn't a bad thing. And I think this is the big thing for Juventus. And this is the thing for Juventus that is still a massive head scratcher for the non-Juventus fans, which is, this is a club that, again, since that Champions League final against Real Madrid and Ronaldo doing that, have tried all sorts of things to re-establish their dominance in the European stage. I mean, this is a club that signed Cristiano Ronaldo. They've changed their club badge to that J. They've done various experimentations with their football kits and lifestyle brand and whatnot. And they seem to be going for this sort of more than a football club, but a lifestyle brand included onto it. And part of that is it's helpful if your team is playing very attractive passing football, so the casuals or the less au fait can pick up Juventus as your second team, or it becomes really cool to wear Juventus top, even if you're not a Juventus fan or Serie A watcher. How they get to that phase, every time they're like, okay, it's going to be Sarri, it's going to be about tidy passing football, and like, oh, no, okay, it's going to be Pirlo, and it's going to be about being the hipster's favorite with bearded Pirlo giving press conferences, and it didn't quite work. So I think this is another experimentation in that it was going to be Thiago Motta, the next up and coming manager in Italian football, and then very quickly, oh, no, he's a lot more stubborn in the dressing room than we thought he would be.
Just another thing, because we say also in Italy, always winning football, as we said, but we need to remember that Sarri won the Scudetto, but he was sacked the same.
He was.
The club and him parted ways. Pirlo won Coppa Italia and Italian Super Cup, but he didn't continue his way as a manager. So it's winning football. I think more it's kind of different mentality. It's what we call in Italy in the last week We read in every newspaper, in every website, Juventinism, okay? This is different from other clubs. I don't know, maybe in England you have Manchester United. Alex Ferguson was yesterday watching the youth team against Aston Villa, I suppose, yesterday evening. So Sir Alex Ferguson is Manchester United, and he knows what the club means. How many managers went after him and tried to do more or less what he did and weren't able to do because it's something different. This winning football, okay? I think more it's also different mentality.
Yeah, Max, I'm fascinated by that when you make those comparisons with Manchester United, because what we have also seen is coaches come into Manchester United and perhaps the coaches are okay, but the infrastructure isn't quite ready to accommodate these coaches. Do you see that with Juventus as well? Not to say Motta is a bad coach, but the infrastructure of Juve doesn't allow him to really do what he can do, as he did in Bologna, for instance.
Yeah, maybe this is one key. Sure. I think for what we know, because as Carl says, we know, we read a lot of things, but for example, Thiago Motta doesn't talk and didn't talk, even in his previous clubs, with journalists, off the records, some personal and dedicated exclusive interviews, nothing, as Guardiola. For example, but he's not Guardiola for now. And so I think the infrastructure, as you said, didn't allow him to express himself, but also that himself, and he wasn't so capable to put himself inside the Juventus environment. This was one of the key, and maybe he didn't talk as he needed with the general manager Cristiano Giuntoli, with the president and the other apical roles and figures of the club. So he couldn't put himself in the environment, and this is the reason why the fans, for example, now want Giorgio Chiellini, who has a role more in a financial part of the club now, to have more influence in the technical sector of the club, because he can tell the people to come from outside what this Juventinism really means.
Yeah. Just before we move on, Max, I just want to talk to you about Juve's business. Players coming in, quite a lot of money spent in the summer, over 160 million pounds. Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa, one of the bigger signings as well. But, yesterday we were doing a podcast on Bournemouth and Iraola, and I'm looking at Dean Howson, who Juve let slip. I'm looking at Matteo Sulle, who's at Roma now doing really interesting thing. Moise Kean, who's at Fiorentina, second top scorer in Serie A.
MVP.
Come on, and they were all under Juve's books. And then you spend all this money and you've hired this new coach, and then you've sacked him again. And these brand new players who were supposed to take the club to the next level haven't worked out. I mean, what's going on here with the business that Juve are doing and how they're scouting, and actually what kind of structure are they trying to create?
I think these are different cases. Some cases are on a financial issue. For example, Matthias Sole, grown in the club, so his value when the club bought him was almost zero, and they sold him for 30 million euros, I suppose, more or less. So it was very important for the financial part of the club to do this kind of operation. Moise Kean, that's true. Now MVP. Yeah, that's true. But at Fiorentina, different levels. As Massimiliano Allegri always repeated, there are categories in life and football, okay? I don't say that is not so good. I say that maybe now is improving and growing, and maybe next year or in 1, 2, 3 years, he can be the center forward of a big club. But he had many chances at Juventus, and he wasn't able to show his value as he's doing now. So I think this is a difference because when you play for Bournemouth, you don't have the same pressure you have when you play for Manchester City, Chelsea, when you play for Fiorentina and Bologna and Roma too, as Sole is doing now, you don't have the same pressure you have at Juventus. If you fail a game, the next game you are on the bench. At Fiorentina, if Moise Kean doesn't score in the next game, the successive game, he will play as a number 9, no doubts. This is the difference. You have to be very strong shoulder to deal with this pressure.
And what about the incomings? Douglas Luiz, I said,
Yeah.
What do you think happened there? Why didn't you think Motta couldn't get the best out of these players?
I think that Douglas Luiz at Aston Villa had the season of his life.
Wow.
So I think he's a good player, but I think that Monchi and Emery are very, very, very good. Very, very good manager, very, very good sport director, because at Sevilla, okay, at Villarreal, Emery, they were able, Monchi and him were able to show the value of players that in other contexts didn't play as they did in Sevilla or in Villarreal. Also, I think now Marcus Rashford is playing very well at Aston Villa, but Aston Villa is not Manchester United. This is the difference. Danjuma at Villarreal played the season of his life, but then he wasn't so good at this high level. He played in the semi-final of the Champions League, but he wasn't able to repeat that level in the other years. So this is the difference. The same, in my opinion, is for Cobb Mainers.
Yes, he's fascinating for me. He's a player that I think should be having a better season.
I think so also, but that at Atalanta, every player plays very well. When they go in another team, not always. For example, Robin Gosens at Inter, he wasn't so good. Now he's so good at Fiorentina because Atalanta is a very, very good environment, a club that protects you even if you don't do very well. Charles de Ketelaere, for example, in this season. So this is the difference. Nico Gonzalez too. I think he's a very good player, but he was very, very, very low level with his performances. Maybe this is him and Club Mainers. There are some tactical issues too, because Club Mainers played wide on the right with Thiago Motta, even if he's more a midfielder, center midfielder. Nico Gonzalez preferred to play on the right, but Thiago Motta played him always or more often on the left. And Tudor, for example, in the last game, played him on the right flank. So this could be a change. But I don't know if they really value the money Juventus paid for them.
Does the shirt weigh heavy, Carl? Certain players stepping up to Manchester United, to traditional clubs like Juve, where the fans expect a lot, and actually the press expects a lot for the players that play for these clubs.
I think Max has spoken very well about the differences. I mean, Moise Kean, as the English speakers may know him best from his stint at Everton, is a very good case. So he was a up-and-coming young player, 18, 19, 20. People were saying this is a player that potentially could be very important to Juventus. He goes to Everton. He spends some time on loan at Paris Saint-Germain, and there was this idea that he was never going to quite figure it out. And because this is the thing you very often see with players. It's very hard to come through as a teenager at a super club of this size, because the expectation isn't that you are good enough to play in the first team, but it's you're good enough to play in the first team of a football team that wants to win the Champions League, which means you have to be at 16, 17, 18, 19, one of the 0.00001% of football players right now. And you're looking at him now for Fiorentina, and you're going, oh, there it is. It's there. You're finally putting it all together. You just needed a couple extra years, a little bit more stability, and your manager not substituting you off in the 65th minute if you miss the chance. And I think what is very interesting about Juventus, and this is me, I'm talking from the outside looking in, a lot of my homework for this episode came from watching Juventus on YouTube. So hi Beppe from that channel. You've been a fantastic resource for me. But a lot of the outside looking in is Juventus went on this historical run of consecutive league titles under not just Conte but also Allegri. Sorry, I get my A's mixed up there. But there was this understanding that they couldn't win the big one, and as we saw for two other teams in Europe, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, when you go 5 or 6, 7 years and you are just dominating your league and you cannot quite get the Champions League to solidify it, you do have this sort of almost league instability because everyone else in your league is catching up, or in theory beginning to catch up, and you're slightly taking your eye off the ball on league competition because you're so focused on how do we take care of Real Madrid, how do we take care of Manchester City, how do we take care of the 12 games that define our season now instead of 38 games that define our season. And I think you can see this particularly in this Juventus squad for the last 5 or 6 years, in that they are not as well equipped to deal with the weekly travails of Serie A football in the way that they used to. There's a physicality to Juventus that isn't there anymore. If you look at some of those Conte teams and the way they used to be able to run and just beat up teams, particularly in the lower half, that isn't really present in this Juventus team right now. And I think that may have also played into why Thiago Motta's not there anymore, because they've drawn, I think they drew 13 games 13 matches under Thiago Motta, which is, it's unacceptable if you're a Juventus fan. You need to start beating some of the bottom half teams 5-6-0. Their Coppa Italia defeat to Empoli, and as Max has said, this was an Empoli B team essentially, because Empoli were more focused on the league travails, that they fielded a bunch of youngsters. So there was a really pronounced period under Motta where they lose to PSV, they get knocked out of the Coppa Italia to Empoli, and then they have essentially a wobble as Juventus and Roma now are chasing their tails for top 4. I think what Claudio Ranieri is doing with Roma as well has created this instability. So we're going from a team that consistently used to win Serie A, so much so to the point that, I mean, some former Juventus higher-ups may have played a big role in trying to get the Super League to happen because they decided league competition isn't really important, to a point now where they're struggling to get even into this expanded Champions League format.
Let's talk about Igor Tudor. He's at the helm and has a contract until the end of this season. For his first game in charge, actually ended up in a 1-0 win over Genoa. It was a convincing first win, Max, but I mean, I'm looking at his CV right now, and from all the teams he's coached, he hasn't stayed that long. Look at the Lazio, even the most recent appointment. He was there, 3 months? Is he here to stay, or should we just see the writing on the wall now?
We don't know. I think that, as he said, and as we know, he has a very strong character. He has broken relationships early in the past, as you said, in his former clubs, with the board sometimes, with some players other times. For example, with Matteo Guendouzi at Marseille, and then they worked together again at Lazio, but he was one of the reasons in the last summer that he part ways with Lazio, because he wanted to change 8 players, including Matteo Guendouzi. I am pretty sure that he knows that at Juventus he can do and can behave like this, and I think also that he is aware that this is the great chance of his career. So I think, and I hope for him, that he will try to be more flexible and to stay more than 3 months at Juventus.
I mean, this is a tricky one, isn't it? Juventus, Carlos, still got a bit of a mountain to climb to get back into the Champions League. But also, I guess, back to some of the stuff Max has been saying in terms of an identity. Former player, I guess, but so was Paolo. He's back. And, you know, perhaps giving them this short period with an identity and someone who knows the club really well could actually be a bit of a success, I guess.
It's a sprint finish, right? It is qualify for the Champions League or bust. Italian football had a pretty nervous week in Europe. Not just when the week where Juventus got knocked out to PSV, also saw the elimination of Atalanta and other teams as well. And we are geared for what should be a really fun finish to Serie A, because, like we've said, it's not just Juventus that are aiming for that fourth position, but Fiorentina are in their tails. Roma are resurgent as well. So will Mr. Tudor still be here in the summer? Will he be allowed to select his own players? I'm not sure. Like you say, he's only been there for short periods of time. But if you need to, it's not quite Big Sam Firefighter. But it does seem to be every game between now and the end of the season is a cup final, so to speak. So that's what they have to aim for.
Yeah. What about the sporting director, Max? Cristiano Gintoli. How is he viewed by Juventus fans? Because it's been an interesting, I'd say the last year at least has been quite fascinating.
I think that we can't forget that the last 3 years of Massimiliano Allegri were very difficult for him, for the club, and also for the fans, because the entertaining football that we expected from Thiago Motta was the dream of the fans, because they came from the years in which they haven't watched entertaining football with him, with Massimiliano Allegri. Even if there were some issues about the financial problems of the clubs, but I think that the Giuntoli was seen as the revolutionary man because he worked at Napoli. He was able, with other good men in his staff, to buy, for example, players like Kvaratskhelia. Okay, Napoli won the Scudetto with Luciano Spalletti playing fantastic football. So people expected this, but as you know, nobody wins without the help of all the other part of the club, all the other part of the technical staff. So this is not only one man. This is not only one man show. More in a club as Juventus. So now he is considered, with Thiago Motta, the first responsible of the failure. But I think that we have to be balanced, and we have to give him another chance.
Carl, you know, Max makes a really interesting point around, you know, certain people going to certain clubs and being expected to do the same job when the infrastructure is different. We were having this conversation literally yesterday. Sporting directors go somewhere else and they go, well, he's going to make us really good again. But you forget where they came from and the resources that they had, and the team that they had was completely different. You know, same with managers, actually. Motta at Bologna, and that infrastructure was so different. You have to kind of... I guess the question I'm asking is it a bit of a gamble asking someone to come from somewhere else and expecting wonderful results in their new job?
Of course, it's a gamble with every job. We've just spoken about Unai Emery and Monkey. Talk to Roma fans about how Monkey worked out over there, right? He worked very, very well at Sevilla. And when he returned to Sevilla for round 2, he openly admitted, hey, what I did at Roma didn't quite work. Monkey loves to tell this story about how he helped bring Ivan Rakitic to Sevilla for his first spell at the club. Sort of takes him around the ground, shows him around the training ground and everything. And Rakitic is like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll think about it. And so the story goes, they went to a coffee shop, and then the waitress was this future Mrs. Rakitic. And that's one of the reasons why he picked Sevilla, right? This was, as much as we would love to say We have figured out football with XG and PPDA and X tilt and field tilt. This is a sport where 22 people play football, but only two, and try and control a football, but only two of them can control it using their hands. This thing bounces weird. Loads of odd things happen. I keep bringing this up, but if you're watching this or listening to this, I heartily recommend you check out Max Allegri's piece on the Players Tribune, where he describes the Champions League final and how it was his life's ambition for more than 20 years to manage a Champions League final, and what it was like to be on the sideline as Cristiano Ronaldo just goes, I'm going to win this game now. And just being stood there going, right. This is, Juventus were 2 or 3 kicks away from none of this being an issue. But they ran into dynasties. They ran into one of the best Real Madrid teams of all time. They've been 2 or 3 times from figuring this all out and being regarded in the same way that we talk about modern Real Madrid, or in the same way that we talk about modern day Bayern Munich, or albeit, shall we say, Bayern Munich when they were in that middle, the pre-Dortmund wobble and the pre-Leverkusen run. But the ball didn't bounce well for them. And I think Juventus's response to defeats in the Champions League, they felt that a little bit more tender than, say, Bayern Munich, than, say, Real Madrid. And their responses to that caused some odd decisions. I mean, if you catch a Juventus fan on the right day, they might tell you they were wrong sacking Pirlo and they should probably get Pirlo back. You catch them on the wrong day and they'll say various other things about them. So this is the thing about, we talk about recruitment. Recruitment relies on so many different factors, not just were they good at the other place, but also their capability to be good here. I mean, I find it fascinating that Max has just brought up how Chiellini, who's working in a financial position at Juventus right now, could be moved into a technical role, or fans are asking him to be in a technical role. As far as I know, Chiellini is in a financial position because that's his degree. That's what he's got his masters in. That's what he's studied, right? That was his plan B throughout all of his footballing career. And while, yes, he might be able to tell you some of the intricacies of being a Juventus player that no one else in the technical team can do, that shouldn't be his speciality.
Before we move on, Max, we actually haven't spoken about something you brought up earlier, is financials. And look, Juve still don't have a main shirt sponsor, which is baffling for me for a club of this stature and a club of this heritage, and potentially a club in my head that has got global appeal. What's going on with this deal? Why do they not have a shirt sponsor right now?
So the story is that until last season, they had an agreement with Jeep, the brand, which is part of Exor, which is the holding company of the Agnelez family. 45 million euros per year. Then Exor decided that Jeep didn't continue to be the sponsor, the shirt sponsor of Juventus. They try to find out some new brand. They were very close to an agreement with ITA Airways, which is the national airway company. But the Italian government stopped the deal because they said they considered that it wasn't the good choice for a national company to be connected with a football club. And then there were talks about 30 million per year for that deal. And then rumors said that there were some proposal from other brands for 20 million euros per year, 25 million euros per year. But Juventus and other brands, Juventus didn't find or didn't want to find the agreement with these brands. I think, and I suppose they don't want to sell out their brand. So they want to keep a high level with the sponsor too, because they are trying to expand their brand, as Carl is saying and said, as other Italian clubs, also abroad, also in the United States market, for example, with a lot of agreements and cooperation with social media influencer in the United States, in the music sector. So in order to expand their brand there. and to maintain a high level. But the key is that you can maintain or you can have a high level with your brand if you have a high level on the pitch.
Yeah, yeah. And just want to finish on this before we go. And then I think it's more of a broader question about the brand of Serie A is where are we now? And please, Carl, after I'm going to go to Max first, but please jump in after. Is that for me, from outside looking in, I'm excited by what I'm watching in terms of the fluctuation of the people who are winning Serie A at the moment. I think it's 3 different teams in the last 4 seasons, but also this season's fascinating. Napoli, Inter, Atalanta, Roma resurgence, Ranieri coming back. There's some really interesting storylines here, which I'm really fascinated by. But also, if you look at the style of football Atalanta are playing, you look at the style of football Napoli are playing, it's really exciting stuff. And I'm really thinking, Max, from your perspective, where do you think the brand is in terms of Europe's top leagues and excitement as well? You've got obviously La Liga, you've got the Premier League. Where do you think Serie A is right now?
I think that Premier League is too far for everybody. La Liga is far on a technical issue, on style of play, very, very good and more entertaining to watch. All the games, above all the games of the lower league teams, in my opinion. I commentated the La Liga for many years, and I enjoyed also commentating games like Betis Sevilla, Villarreal, Real Sociedad, Girona. The style of play is very, very high. Bundesliga is very, very interesting because of the speed of the play and the infrastructure. The stadiums are fantastic, as in England, as in Spain, because many clubs are rebuilding their stadium. This is the most important issue for us. The stadiums, the visual, the image you have, the framing you have when you see an Italian stadium, except Juventus Stadium, Udinese Stadium, Atalanta Stadium, the others, San Siro, okay, because of its history, but too far from English stadiums. So I think Premier League, Liga, Bundesliga, and Serie A on a technical issue and level, we are there. But as a brand, as the image, the framing, we export, we are in a lower level.
I think Max is right. First of all, I do have to correct myself. The 1920 season was won by Juventus. AC Milan won it in 21. AC Milan won it in 21.
Like any good
22.
journalist. Very good, very good. We'll allow you that.
Before the comment section eats me alive. Sorry. I think Max has raised a really interesting point in the Premier League the Premier League's a big global brand. I think one of the advantages the Premier League have over La Liga, Bundesliga and Serie A is it's English speaking market first. So while Serie A has done very good work, particularly in the United States, to integrate itself in United States soccer coverage as well, there is a degree of translation that is occurring there. So you're not quite getting the full feel and the vibe of Serie A football without having to go through a little bit of work. And I think that can be difficult. I think it's quite interesting that Serie A has followed the lead from La Liga. So we are now seeing Coppa Italia being held in Saudi Arabia as well, which is an interesting financial decision by both leagues there. And also, Juventus, I keep bringing up, Juventus were probably one of the first clubs in Italy to go, let's become a lifestyle brand and really push things. So the change in the badge, I believe the one of the kits where they did away with the stripes and it was one big block of black and one big block of white, which was much it wasn't to the traditional legacy fans, shall we say.
Did that have hints of pink in it as well? I can't remember.
It was a red little red stripe as well. They've definitely made attempts at increasing their brand and increasing their global reach. But ultimately, I think the good thing and the thing that Serie A has in its favor that La Liga doesn't have, and I don't even think the Premier League has at this point in time, is genuine title races. The last 3 title races have been phenomenal. And we're talking right now, Inter Milan are top of the table, but this is probably the weaker Inter Milan team. They're not as strong as what they've been in 2 or 3 seasons previous. I think Napoli have bounced back in a way that has surprised some. Betting against Antonio Conte when he only has 1 game a week difficult is there as well. But also seeing a resurgent Roma coming from their sort of post. Claudio Ranieri being able to fix Roma after what was left by
Jose
Mourinho is quite funny. Fiorentina doing what they're currently doing, and even teams perhaps not necessarily going for the title, but Udinese play some very, very interesting football there as well. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you're very much like a Premier League watcher first, if you do spot a Serie A game on the weekend, I heartily recommend it.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw some tears in your eyes when saying Jose. You miss him. You miss him.
Well, with all the stuff that's going on in Turkey now, I do not miss him at all.
One of a kind.
Less drama in my life. Gentlemen, let's leave it there. Honestly, I really appreciate your time. Max, thank you so much for joining us from Italy. Carl, thank you so much for your knowledge and research on this one as well. And also thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And do not forget to leave us a comment. Thanks for watching. We're back soon. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anka, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcast from.